Hello, welcome to the garden tour. So today we're going to visit Dundee Botanic Gardens. Now, as you can see, this is the entrance to the Botanic Gardens, and this is the layout of the actual gardens. So it's all divided into zones. Now, the first thing that you really see are the greenhouses. Now, there's two greenhouses. The first is really a tropical greenhouse, the second is a temperate greenhouse. Now, this area here just shows the reception and where you gain entry. We're going to follow basically round in a clockwise direction and just take in the whole garden. So this is the first place that I went into, which is the tropical greenhouse. What I loved about this was that it's absolutely full of plants. A lot of tropical greenhouses or botanic gardens can be a little bit messy. And what really struck me was just how clean and tidy this place was. It was in good condition, everything was looking at its best. It really was a joy to be in. And as I say, there was a good mix of plants throughout this greenhouse. The Botanic Gardens are open all year round. March to October, they have different hours. November to February, they have slightly different hours, so it's best to check. What I'll do is I'll put a link to their website in the description for the video. It's run with 5 staff and also volunteers as well. The gardens are open from 10 to 4:30 every day, and the price, I paid £5, which actually I thought was a fantastic price because really you could be there a long time, you could be there all day. The day I went, it was nice and sunny, and you could have taken a picnic, you could have spent really 3 or 4 hours, no problem at all, if you don't want to rush and just actually really enjoy the place. Now, the whole garden has good paths, as you can see in the greenhouse, but also around the whole site there are good paths. So it's very accessible for people with disabilities or for families as well. It was said that you can go off the paths, so feel free to explore and to have a look at all the things that are there. So Dundee Botanic Garden was established in 1971, and it's a place to provide plants for research. They do lots of things. There's quite a lot in there. So it's not just a garden. It's doing research. It's got a living laboratory. It's got a library. It's got a woodlog beehive. It's got a garden of evolution, a tree of tranquility. There's a lot of things that we're going to see as we go around the garden. So in this is the temperate greenhouse, and obviously it's full of cactus and things that don't need to be quite as hot. Again, beautifully laid out, a nice mix of plants, and basically zoned. So a lot of botanic gardens tend to put things into classes. What Dundee Botanic Garden has done is put things into countries or areas. So as we go around, we'll see that there's actually the glasshouse areas, an allotment area, Mediterranean area, America, Australia and New Zealand, Asia, native area, and a herb. So at the moment we're in the allotment area, and this was nice to see. I always find allotments really, really interesting because I used to have one. It's just a joy being in an allotment area. This is the back of the glass houses, so this is really what they were saying was like the Mediterranean area. So as you can see, there's actually some nice wide open areas of grass and a lot of mature planting. Now in 2021 they actually lost 45 of their mature trees due to storm damage, and as we go around you'll see that there's a lot of pieces of wood lying around. So you can see that there's been like timber felling. So rather than getting rid of the wood, clearing it out, they've actually stacked it, they're putting it to use, they've used it for sculpture, and that's a really good thing that they've done. So the whole Botanic Garden basically sits on a sloped site just above the River Tay. So if you're standing on the lower edge, you can actually see the airport, the River Tay, and down to the bridges. So I think originally this site would have been the mature gardens or the large gardens of the large Victorian villas that sit along the Perth Road in Dundee. So this is interesting. This is the home for honeybees, and it's a 3D printed house which mimics basically a log that bees naturally would habitat in. You look up and there it is, and you can actually see the little bees going in and out. What they've done is they've created this to mimic their natural home, And these bees get to live there in the best situation because they don't have their honey harvested. It's left for them to get them through the winter. So nice open spaces, nice mature planting. Really, this is an ideal place that you could go and take a picnic, especially if you've got kids. They can run around like daft and really work off their energy. This was the Garden of Evolution, or this is the Garden of Evolution. This was created with a lot of volunteers and a lot of different people helping. And it really is set in the kind of centre of the Botanic Gardens, and it kind of creates a nice focal point when you first come in. So as you can see, we've got wide paths, we've got wide planted areas, a real mix of shrubs, trees, and nice open parkland as well. So the whole site actually covers 9.5 hectares, which is pretty big. They also do a school program and a volunteer program as well. So if you are local and you don't have access to a garden but you'd really like to get hands on, there are opportunities to volunteer. And again, in our description box, we'll have the link for the Botanic Gardens, so you could have a look there. Now, in the glass houses, they're really good at using biological controls. So they use real predators at different times of year, basically to come out and eat things like mealybugs, which can be a real problem in these enclosed areas. And because of this, then they really don't need to use chemical control whatsoever, which is great. One thing that's always good about botanic gardens is that things are very well signposted. So you can see that every plant or every tree has definitely been numbered. You can work out what it is, and you get information about what you're really looking at. So, from an educational point of view and for a kid's point of view, this is really good. But also for plants people, they're going to love that as well. Whereas sometimes you go and visit large gardens that are less formal and more, they've been private gardens, and not everything is doesn't have the name on it. Whereas here, you could see what you were looking at. What I really loved about this garden was there were lots of little areas where there was like informal seating, or even like gazebos, little areas where you could sit. There was a little play area for kids that used some of these fallen trees that had been chopped up. This is looking down to the airport, so it's really that close. And when I was there, there was a little bit of noise because there was a plane getting ready to go. But for most of the time that I was there, there was no big noise. It really was quite a peaceful place to be. Now, the one thing that you can't bring into the garden is actually a dog. You can bring in service dogs, so like a guide dog, but not your general dog. So that is just something to be aware of. What was nice as well was there was a few different areas with water. So there was a couple of pond areas which I quite liked. And interestingly, the Asian area, I was kind of thinking this would be your kind of typical Japanese garden. And it wasn't. It was literally an area planted with plants from the Asian area, rather than a stylized Japanese or Chinese garden with features, and it had not been styled. It is just literally the plants from that particular part of the world. So that was quite interesting. But if you really got your heart set on seeing a Japanese garden, then unfortunately there's not one there. But there's so much more there anyway that it's not going to be a huge disappointment. So here you can see one of these little seats, and there really was benches and seats dotted around throughout the whole garden and area and grounds basically. So what I did was I just worked in a big elliptical loop, so basically going clockwise, and that was really a good way to approach it. I think walking past the greenhouses, you're not going to walk past them and go straight into the garden. I think you want to actually get into the greenhouses and do them first. That just seems logical. So there is a kind of logic. This is coming towards the end. There was a lot of sculpture in the garden, which I really loved, and some big sculptures as well that had been situated elsewhere and moved back. So this just gives you a little bit more detail about it. Hope you've enjoyed our visit today to the Botanic Garden. If you have, then let us know in the comments below if you've been and if you fancy going. We'd love it if you would subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel. And thank you very much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.